If you've got a story about relationships, it's stopping you from finding what's going to bring that relationship to you.
Self-improvement is big business.
You and only you can take responsibility for your life. This is about taking responsibility.
We pour tons of time and energy into making ourselves better and shaping our kids into perfect models. But really, how much of personality is in our control?
About 50% of the differences among people in their standing on the major personality traits are inherited.
Tonight on The Why. Personality, what's flexible and what's pre-baked.
Good Tuesday evening. I'm Chance Seals with The Why. If you scan across most cable channels at nighttime, like right now, you're going to hear breathless blabbering about scandals, big and small, doesn't matter. There's a bottomless supply of shock out there at what certain public figures, usually the president, are capable of doing and saying. A few issues are particularly hot tonight. And again, they change all the time. But right now it is President Trump's alleged affairs with a porn star and a Playboy playmate. Plus, you have Russia, of course. In the past 24 hours alone, Mr. Trump allowed his administration to do something really big and important. He let him kick out 60 Russians accused of being intel agents. It royally upset the Kremlin, which has promised retribution already. Many people were shocked that the president would clash with that country he's being investigated for potentially colluding with. But here's the thing, this is classic Trump. He plays nice with the leader, Putin, one-on-one, face-to-face, or over the phone, and then he gains leverage through a sharp-elbowed side move. Has he turned over a new leaf? Some have asked. Has he decided that Putin has the goods on him and he must make his move right now? No. And no to the other one also. Anytime these things pop up, whether it's a sleight of hand on Russia, diplomacy, or fighting with Robert Mueller one-sided through a tweet, or posting about Mika Brzezinski's plastic surgery, he is the constant. He is the Donald. He's Donald J. Trump. Maggie Haberman, the reporter who probably knows him the best out there and has covered him for years and years, sporadically tweets this reminder here. Quote, "What is amazing is the capacity of people who watch the campaign to be surprised by what they are seeing. Trump is 70. People don't change." He's 71 now. That was last year. And he still hasn't changed. So when you hear that, people don't change. You might take that personally also. It might sound pessimistic to you, but it's mostly true. Our personalities are largely fixed. We cannot do much about them. Yet and still, some of our very favorite people, like Oprah, very favorite, they spend years and years, make billions of dollars telling us how to change the way we see and experience the world.
The awareness of the thoughts or the awareness of the voice inside your head is where consciousness resides. And that is who we really are.
Yes.
So that's what you came to.
Yes.
That was your open door
Yes.
to the path to understanding yourself as a spiritual being inside a physical human body.
With a mind.
And isn't this the most important thing ever?
Period.
To get the
Period.
Now, I love Oprah with every fiber of my being, and I mean that. I watched all 25 years. I scheduled my college courses around watching her. And yes, we are spiritual beings. I agree on that. But this really misses a few important things. One is that our worldview is not just a spiritual experience, even if the book says that. It's based on our bodies and our genetics. Our personality actually springs from our own DNA. Second thing, it is very, very unlikely that someone who's prone to, let's say, anxiety is magically going to identify their inner divinity and just never worry again. They'll never face it again. That's not going to happen. Yet, the self-help selection on Amazon, it's endless. We scrolled through it today just to show you here if you haven't looked for yourself. You can find titles like Hardcore Self-Help, F Anxiety, and then you have Mindset, how positive thinking will set you free and help you achieve massive success in life. Worthy goals to be sure, but changing the very essence of who you are, your personality, is a big leap. In undergrad, I was a psychology major, and one of my favorite professors out there, Dr. Eisenstadt, Donna Eisenstadt, I loved her. She would tell us this in social psychology where we learned about things like personality. She'd say, your parents always said you're special, you're not. They told you you could be president one day, you can't. Look at the odds. It's tough. So here's my tough love tonight. All that talk about changing your life and your personality, it's probably never going to happen. Self-help can help us become a little more self-aware, yes, but making huge and really fundamental changes, it's often a placebo. The science shows personality is largely out of our control.
What's in a personality? The possibilities really are endless. Our unique array of traits stretch longer than the numerals of pi, right? Sorry to burst your bubble, but you are way simpler than you think.
I said over easy!
There are just 5, F-I-V-E, 5 core personality traits, according to most research, and we all just have varying degrees of each. It's called the 5-factor model, or OCEAN. More about the big 5 in a moment. Let's briefly look back at the history of how we got here. Ancient Greece. Scholars like Hippocrates and Plato debated ideas like hot versus cold temperament, being artistic versus being sensible. Jump ahead to the 19th century, a debate about a possible link between the physical brain and personality. That was settled when an explosion blew a steel rod through the construction worker Phineas Gage's head, and his personality completely changed. Freud and Jung later highlighted the subconscious. Then in the 1940s, Raymond Cattell came up with 16 fundamental factors of personality, which Louis Goldberg later cut to 5. That brings us to now. Renowned personality researchers Paul Costa and Robert McCrae validated the concept, and OCEAN was born. It is remarkably good at predicting relationship success, plus social, academic, and professional circumstances. Here's what the traits actually mean, plus some fun facts that come from Psychology Today. Openness. Highly open people are amenable to unconventional ideas, even when they challenge existing views. People with low levels of openness are more suspicious of those ideas. Fun fact, studies show that people high in openness are more likely to endorse liberalism. Conscientiousness. The highly conscientious exhibit goal-oriented behavior. Low, less motivation, less concern about tidiness and punctuality. Little factoid, studies show that marrying someone high in conscientiousness increases your chance of workplace success. Extraversion. We all know these people. Outgoing, socially confident behavior. People with low levels of extroversion, though, introverts, are quieter, often feel shy around other people. They will often try to avoid demanding social gatherings, and they prefer smaller groups. Research shows men with strong hand grips are likely to rank high in extraversion. It's not true for women. Agreeableness. These people are friendly and they are cooperative, often are considered likable by their peers. People with low agreeableness are less concerned with pleasing others and making friends. You could probably guess. Agreeable people have happier marriages. Neuroticism. Highly neurotic people are prone to worry and emotional ups and downs. Those with low neuroticism are able to remain calm in stressful situations, viewing problems in proportion to their true importance. Neuroticism does have an upside, though. Studies find neurotic people are less likely to post things on Facebook that could seem controversial. They just post pictures instead. The 5 factors are believed to originate in your very DNA. About 40 to 60% of traits are heritable. We can stretch ourselves and adapt to environments, of course, but Sour Sam is probably never going to be Sunny Sally, and Moderate Martha is never going to change the loosey-goosey worldview of Liberal Linda.
Did you realize so much of your personality, your family's personality, your drive or laziness, chattiness or turtle tendencies for us introverts were predetermined by your DNA? For instance, I see parts of myself that always bugged me about my dad. And then I later realized that's me and that is in our genes. Of course, that doesn't absolve me or others from constantly working to improve ourselves, right? But when it's in your bones, you get a little bit of leeway and you relax on yourself. Still, many people, especially parents, if you've been around any who are having newborns and they're talking about how are they going to parent, what are they going to do, they feel a heavy responsibility to construct the perfect human existence. Remember the Tiger Mom?
Your daughters were not allowed to attend a sleepover, have a play date, be in a school play, complain about not being in the play, watch TV or play computer games.
Right.
This seems mean.
I don't think so at all. I think the message is, I believe in you. You are capable of so much more than you realize. And if you just stop whining and, don't give up and don't make excuses, you can do anything you want in your life.
Can't even complain about not being in the play. But knowing what we know, what we just talked about here, you could say that she's trying to boost her children's levels of conscientiousness. But what else could she run up against or try to tinker with? For instance, what if one daughter is higher on extraversion just naturally, who'd rather be socializing than practicing? It doesn't make you a derelict parent to allow her to pursue more social ventures than piano, solitary. It makes you responsive to your child and their natural preferences, really. There's a book out that's called The Gardener and the Carpenter. It caught my eye. Here's what it says, that parents should not be meticulous craftsmen, the carpenters, lining up every angle and every edge for their child of who they ought to be. Instead, parents should be gardeners, creating an environment, with some boundaries, of course, where a child's natural abilities and personality can bloom. Part of the book jacket says this, quote, "Although caring for children is profoundly important, it is not a matter of shaping them to turn out a particular way. Children are designed to be messy and unpredictable, playful and imaginative, and to be very different from both their parents and from each other. Children, and later adults, are just supposed to be themselves, in other words. Some direction is always good. Too much is suffocating." So let's try to pry this apart tonight here on The Why. Personality is baked into our genetics, but it's also affected by our environments. How much of that is malleable? How much is preset? I asked an expert in the field, Dr. Richard Zinbark, professor of psychology at Northwestern University.
How much of our personalities, young and old, are pre-baked?
There are major behavior genetics studies, twin studies of personality traits, and they show that roughly about 50% of the differences among people in their standing on the major personality traits are inherited.
The twin study, can you tell me how they usually work? Because people hear that and they assume two twins growing up in the same home, but it's unusual now to split up twins, but in the past, many times they were split up.
The design includes not only twins who are reared together, but also twins who are adopted away at birth and adopted into separate homes. And so those designs are particularly strong for being able to separate out the effects of the shared genetic component from the shared environmental component. And even when we have twins who are adopted apart from birth, those studies still converge on suggesting about 50% of the differences among people due to genes.
Could you tell me a few of those, as you call them, striking similarities between some of these twins who may have been separated at birth, growing up in separate households, but then you actually test them later on and realize, oh my gosh, they're so similar?
One that comes to mind from a paper published by the Minnesota group was a pair of twins separated at birth, had never met, and they each had a very distinctive way of getting into the ocean when they went to the beach. They both would get into the ocean, they'd get into the water walking backwards. And as soon as the waves would start to hit their calves, they'd both start to giggle.
When you hear these self-help professionals out there speaking on, let's say, a talk show, or you see a book promising they're going to revolutionize your life, what is your honest thought?
My honest thought is to be very skeptical and dubious. In addition to being a personality psychologist, I'm also a trained clinical psychologist, so I do therapy with people. And even when I do therapy with people, my expectations for the amount of change is on the modest side.
So there is no fundamentally changing your personality or your perception of the world, but there is some tinkering that can be done with intentionality.
I wouldn't say, never. There are some psychologists who study major life events that might be associated with some major changes in personality. I think to the average person, when they hear that there's a genetic influence to something, believe that that means that it's unchangeable. And that's not the case either. So personality can change, and it does change. And maybe over the course of 50 years, it can change pretty radically.
Let's get a little more broad here and a little bit of a different point of view. Surprised me. So when we talk about personality being genetic, it's important to get a little more specific as to what does that mean. What it does not mean is that your entire life and existence is completely set at birth, though it does suggest that your thoughts or memory, movements, impressions are guided by DNA. Let's talk about the science for a second. If you watch this clip here, it's from the BBC. I love this clip. It lasts for about 6 minutes overall if you want to look at it on YouTube. But you're going to see two twin brothers from Poland originally, reunited after 70 years apart. Researchers, if they're watching this, they would dissect things like clues for mannerisms, or they're wearing similar shirts, or particular habits.
We have a time to celebrate now and look to the future, and like to say forever. Bracia forever. Tak, bracia forever. Thank you very much.
Brawo, brawo. Jeszcze raz ci całuję po złoty, mój skarbunku.
I spoke with a professor of psychology, Britt Roberts, from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. He walked me through how some of this works because, yes, there is some predetermination, but it might be more limited than you think. And when we talk about durability of these traits, does it go from 3 to 30 years old? Again, it might surprise you. Do some kids have stronger traits that they might be born with that are more durable through time than others? Or is it that basically everyone has about 50% traits that last, for the long term?
If you try to predict anything from a 3-year-old to, for example, adulthood, it's pretty close to a zero correlation between, for example, childhood temperament and adult personality. And that's been shown across a number of really cool longitudinal studies that have tracked kids from age 3 through age 40, for example. And so the level of stability that you see from childhood, especially early childhood to adulthood, is too low to say something like, the seed that comes from the corn is going to dictate exactly what's going on.
So tell me what it means then that something is durable over time when they say that they can measure this consistently.
So the periods of 20 to 30 and 30 to 40 are actually what I call the crucible of development. That's when most people gain the most in terms of positive traits. But the stabilities that are there, especially in 1 to 5 year spaces, are pretty high. And so the question you have to ask yourself at that point is, how much change do you want to see? Are you working for somebody who's, how should we put it, kind of difficult to work with? Are they going to change this year, which is about as long as you want to put up with them? Probably not. Will they change 10 years from now? Probably.
How much influence do parents really have on their children's personality?
If you look around, especially if you have friends with families with more than one child, you'll see that there's a tremendous amount of heterogeneity in the kids, and yet the parents are doing the same thing typically. They're not changing their parenting practices dramatically. They're not changing their personality dramatically, yet the kid is extroverted, or the other child is introverted and shy, or the one kid's having troubles, the other kid is not. It's very common to hear these stories, but there's also this preconceived notion that parents are the most important institution for, let's say, developing a child's personality. Right. The data just doesn't support that. In fact, if anything, I would argue for a forgiveness model of parenting, that we probably give way too much responsibility to parents for the personalities of their kids.
How often should a parent be prodding, and how much should they be accepting?
Let's say your kid is really shy, and by prodding you mean stuffing them into social groups where they're really uncomfortable. They're going to be upset, and it's going to be very difficult for them. And unless you give them a lot of scaffolding, a lot of support, and a lot of patience, they're not going to have a good reaction. And so they may punish you by, acting out or getting upset and making it really aversive.
What's happening right now in the field of personality psychology? What are you excited about?
We're discovering that we can track somebody's personalities through their online behaviors, for example. And so there are a couple of groups that are doing remarkable things with Facebook, Twitter, and other types of media.
We're not talking about Cambridge Analytica.
I am in some respects. So I mean, not them in particular, but if you look deeply into that story, the person in Cambridge Analytica who created the app was actually stealing ideas from the Cambridge Psychometrics group.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way we think of personality. We don't think of personality as answering 10 questions about yourself. We think of personality as what you do in all the different contexts you have. And now, because of these computers and these phones and all the different things we have, we're leaving traces of ourselves in lots of places, and they accumulate.
So just to cap this off, the field of personality psychology is quickly advancing, as you hear, from DNA discoveries to data online. But it all comes back to this simple axiom. We are, usually, just who we are, whether that's a 71-year-old president who enjoys chaos or a 30-year-old librarian who enjoys order. You feel a lot less pressure, trust me, when you realize only some things are within your control and the others are just up to nature.